Emotional alchemy, the legacy audit. Examine your emotional blueprint. Transmute inherited patterns. Transcend for generational freedom.
Welcome back to Luminousz Ztarr Fables. Today we are embarking on a journey of deep psychological reconstruction. We are moving beyond simple healing and into the realm of emotional alchemy. This isn't just about surviving. It is about taking the trauma-coded stimuli of your past and systematically dismantling them until you can reconstruct them into a vessel for your own release. In the world of cultural psychology, emotional alchemy is a sophisticated defense mechanism. It operates on a simple but profound premise. When we take the monstrous, which could be those things that threaten our psychological safety, and subject them to the lens of absurdity, we shift from victimhood to authorship. We are here today to learn how to turn the monsters into punchlines. Think about the Scary Movie franchise. Since 2000, it has served as a cultural blueprint for defanging what could be considered monstrous. By turning the terrifying Scary Movie's Ghostface into an incompetent figure or mocking the inevitable doom of The Ring, the franchise provides a roadmap for emotional recalibration. We are going to apply that same logic to the algorithmic monsters of the 21st century. What is an algorithmic monster? For a digital creator, it is the pressure of permanent visibility. But for a survivor of a narcissistic family structure, the algorithm is the unpredictable, rigid set of rules and moods dictated by a narcissistic parent. It is the feeling that you are under a constant monitor, where your value is tied to your performance. This leads us to our first core challenge, identity fragmentation. This is the psychological split between the godlike public persona you are forced to project and the private, vulnerable human being you are. This is your death note moment, the realization that unchecked visibility to a narcissist or an audience eventually leads to a collapse of the self. Consider the case of Kai Cenat. His Mafiathon endurance test pushed the limits of human identity. His pivot into Scary Movie 6 and his fashion house Vevey represents a calculated move to reclaim his narrative. By literally parodying the prison of his streaming room on the big screen, he is performing alchemy, turning his real-life fatigue into a cinematic set piece. In the episodic narrative of the character Ellea, we see these same challenges. Characters living with deceptive identities under government scrutiny are the ultimate metaphor for the survivor. They must scroll through their environment for threats, living in a state of high anxiety reaction rather than intentional peace. Ellea's journey is our journey. To solve this, I introduced the 3-3-3 framework, in which I deliver my message to survivors by asking 3 critical questions. Discuss and explain 3 key talking points. Then I suggest 3 focus tools to help you stay on track with your recovery. Now, let's go over the first pillar, which is the legacy audit. This is a psychological autopsy of your behavior. You must ask, which parts of me are authentic and which are merely high-frequency reactions to the monitors in my life? You are identifying the coercive box you were built in. The legacy audit requires you to look at your history not as a tragedy, but as a data set. We are looking for the trauma-coded tropes that the narcissists use to keep you in check. Once identified, we move to the second pillar, the Firewall Protocol. This is your defense system against the monsters. The Firewall Protocol utilizes strategic silence. You must understand that you do not owe the world or your family to a real-time narration of your growth. Silence prevents the leak of personal data that others use to rebox you. It is about protecting the private human from the public persona. Within this protocol, we use gray rock modulation. This is the alchemy of boringness. By making yourself as uninteresting as a gray rock, you turn a high-stakes horror movie argument with a narcissist into a dry, boring documentary. You are stripping the monster of the emotional engagement it craves. The third and final pillar is the heart-centered verdict. This is where you transition from a victim of an algorithm to a systems architect. You are no longer reacting to what people want. You are intentionally creating who you are. This is the moment you reclaim your authorship. To do this effectively, you must embrace the 5 looks philosophy. In the fashion world, if you show too much, the audience finds something to hate on. In your life, if you try to be a jack of all trades, people pleaser, you fragment your identity. Instead, focus on 5 strong codes, specific values that are undeniable and uniquely yours. Any survivor of narcissistic abuse can use a physical artifact, much like Cenat's Vivet journal or the uncut lookbook. This is a private space where your ideas can cook without being quantified. It is a firewall against gaslighting. If you have it in your physical record, the narcissist cannot rewrite your algorithm. Remember, reinvention is an act of psychological resistance. Whether you are navigating a career shift or recovering from years of family trauma, the goal is to move from reactive performance to intentional creation. You are the architect. You are the alchemist. As we look at Ellea's story, we see that the deceptive identities eventually give way to a brand system of survival. By auditing her legacy, she stops being a pawn and starts building a future based on her internal truth. I've observed that when a person learns to laugh at what once terrified them, they can see the narcissist as a slapstick trope and the algorithmic pressure as a gross-out joke that he or she has won. And that is when we have transformed fear into laughter. We have performed the alchemy. You can challenge yourself to begin making more choices that will naturally bring about necessary change. You are no longer a character in someone else's horror movie. You are the writer, director, and lead architect of a new narrative. There are many survivors who have decided to write the epilogue to their story rather than allowing their narcissist to have the last say. Be sure to share this video and check out Ellea's story by selecting the next video to watch. Until next time, keep thriving forward.
All right, let's get right into this explainer and unpack the absolutely fascinating intersection of internet creator culture, intense burnout, and psychological survival. You know, in a world where millions are literally watching your every single move, your identity often turns into a performance. And eventually, that performance can easily become a prison. We see it happen all the time, right? Creators burn out, celebrities break down, and the internet just sits back and watches it unfold like some never-ending reality show. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We're looking at what happens when someone refuses to stay inside the box the world built for them. What actually happens when a creator completely tears up the script and decides to write a brand new one. Well, we are going to explore exactly that through the lens of Kai Cenat, tracking his journey from a heavily documented period of burnout straight into a totally unexpected leap into the chaotic, trauma-coded universe of Scary Movie 6.
Picture this, because the way the world actually found out about Kai Cenat's role in this film is just so visceral and chaotic. This was absolutely not your polished, heavily vetted Hollywood press release. No way. The whole story kicked off with a leak that completely bypassed traditional PR. Marlon Wayans is hanging out at a screening for Scream 7, casually pulls out his phone and records a teaser for Scary Movie 6. Then he just posts it online. And the internet, doing what the internet does best, completely explodes, dissecting every single frame of this footage. Right there, right in the middle of it all, is Kai Cenat. Yet in the face of this massive, internet-breaking viral moment, Cenat himself remains absolutely 100% silent.
Now, you have to admit, that is a glaring anomaly. I mean, we are talking about one of the most influential streamers of his entire generation. This is a guy whose whole brand, his entire livelihood, is built on talking, reacting, and broadcasting his life in real time to millions of people. So why on earth does a massive streamer suddenly refuse to say a single word about his biggest mainstream crossover moment ever? It's a mystery that really demands we look a little deeper than just chalking it up to a simple casting choice.
Let's actually trace how this whole thing escalated from a blurry, informal teaser leak into a massive cultural question mark. At minute 0, you've got Wayans at that Scream 7 screening. Just a few hours later, that footage is absolutely everywhere. But the really interesting part happens days later. Because it wasn't some studio executive who confirmed Cenat's identity, it was the fans. They went total detective mode and decoded a super brief visual of him sitting in a streaming room setup surrounded by monitors, which is a very clear nod to his real-life persona, and then weeks pass. Mainstream entertainment outlets finally come out and confirm the cameo is real, but they note one crucial, fascinating detail. Cenat has given 0 interviews. The entire narrative is being driven completely by audience speculation.
Section 1. The context, the pressure cooker of performance. To really get to the bottom of this mystery, we have to zoom out a bit and understand the intense environment these creators operate in. Back in 2022, fellow massive streamer Pokemon said something incredibly poignant. The internet feels like it owns you. And honestly, that hits the nail on the head. In the digital age, creators live under a microscope that often goes way beyond what traditional celebrities deal with. It grounds all these abstract ideas into a very raw human truth. Top creators like PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, and Lily Singh have all spoken out about this exact same sense of identity collapse. What they're describing is basically the emotional architecture of coercive control, a dynamic that is very, very familiar to survivors of deeply toxic or abusive environments. Which brings us right back to Kai Cenat's own lived experience. He has been very open about the crushing emotional weight of his audience's expectations. He actually said on stream, "People don't let you grow. They want you to stay the same forever." So the big takeaway here is that the intense period of backlash Cenat faced between 2023 and 2024 wasn't just about shifting algorithms or trying out new content. It was about the terrifying, suffocating feeling of being entirely trapped inside an identity that the internet had built for him. This really forces us to redefine a word that we probably toss around way too casually: burnout. We're not just talking about needing a vacation. Actually, scratch that, it's way deeper than just being physically tired. In this context, burnout is the profound emotional cost of constant performance. It's the collapse of a person's identity under relentless public scrutiny and intense parasocial pressure. It is a very real existential threat. It pushes creators right to the edge where they only have two choices: completely break down or completely break the script.
Section 2. The Psychological Pivot. The Alchemy of Horror Comedy. And breaking the script is exactly what he did next. This leads us to his brilliant, completely unofficial transition into Scary Movie 6. Now, since the year 2000, this franchise has made its mark by parroting heavy, trauma-coded films like Scream, The Ring, Saw, and The Exorcist. When you really think about the mechanics of these two genres, you unlock exactly why horror comedy is so incredibly sophisticated. Horror is built entirely on anticipation, helplessness, and the ultimate loss of control. But comedy is all about release, absurdity, and reclaiming that control. When you smash those two opposing forces together, it sparks a massive aha moment. Horror comedy becomes a uniquely powerful psychological coping mechanism. It's a way to confront severe trauma by exaggerating it until it literally becomes laughable.
If you break down why this specific franchise resonates with people so deeply, it's because it mimics the exact emotional journey of a survivor. It all starts with that initial fear, which very quickly escalates into an overwhelming loss of control. But then, by aggressively introducing absurdity into the mix, we finally arrive at a state of release. It is pure emotional alchemy, taking the very things that completely terrify us and transforming all that crippling powerlessness into a parody.
Ultimately, the whole goal is turning the monster into a punchline. For Kai Cenat, stepping into a movie genre that explicitly acknowledges fear, blows it wildly out of proportion, and then mocks it, well, it perfectly mirrors his own real-life needs. Think about it as a symbolic arc of survival. He's taking the overwhelming, very real demand to perform on a live stream for millions and stepping into a fictional world that defangs that exact same fear. It is so much more than just a career pivot. It's a profound psychological survival tactic.
Section 3. The Strategy of Silence. Reclaiming the narrative.
All of this context makes his behavior regarding the movie just incredibly fascinating. Let's bring it all together. Think about standard Hollywood expectations versus what is actually playing out in reality right now. The contrast is night and day. Normally, you get a highly manicured studio press release, back-to-back talk show interviews, and a narrative tightly controlled by studio executives. But Cenat's rollout? The origin is literally leaked phone footage. The promotion is absolute, complete silence. And the narrative control rests entirely in the hands of audience speculation. He is completely subverting the norm here, and it creates this incredible narrative tension that actually mirrors the horror comedy genre itself. It's totally unexpected, a little absurd, and it fuels massive anticipation. We have to recognize that in the fast-paced realm of digital creators, where everyone is literally speaking all the time, silence is not just an absence of noise, it is a huge signal. In trauma psychology, silence is a very well-known survival mechanism. It's a highly deliberate tactic used to regain control after enduring prolonged scrutiny. For a creator who felt that people don't let you grow, choosing silence is setting an ironclad boundary against external definition. It is a powerful act of reclaiming authorship over his own identity before the world even gets a single chance to define it for him. By intentionally withholding any commentary, Cenat flips the entire power dynamic on its head. A perfect example of this just happened recently. He made a major, highly publicized appearance on The Jennifer Hudson Show, and guess what? He made absolutely zero mention of the movie. Nothing at all. By refusing to let the internet own his story before he is good and ready, he turns what could have been a simple cameo into a massive cultural event. Choosing not to speak has genuinely become his loudest statement of all.
I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. In an era where every single one of us is expected to broadcast everything, to essentially narrate our lives in real time for an ever-watching audience, is silence actually the ultimate power move? Kai Cenat's journey really highlights the incredible psychological power of setting firm boundaries, evolving way past the roles people try to force us into, and ultimately taking back your own script.
Step number one, point number one, tool number one. Discontinue to carry the shame of the narcissistic parent.
When we think about a prison, there's a very specific visceral image that comes to mind, right? Like cold iron bars, heavy concrete walls.
Yeah, maybe a guard tower looming overhead.
Exactly. The architecture of containment is just so obvious, you could reach out and touch it.
Right, because it's a strictly physical boundary. You know exactly where the inside ends and the outside begins.
Yeah, if you're inside, you're captive.
And if you're outside, you're free. It's binary.
But what happens when the prison isn't made of concrete? Like, what if it's constructed entirely out of metrics, expectations, and just this permanent visibility?
That is the modern dilemma right there.
It really is. And today, we're cracking open a truly bizarre stack of sources to answer a question you probably never thought to ask. We're taking a deep dive into some really fascinating material.
Very eclectic material, I'd say.
Oh, totally. We've got cultural psychology reports on narcissistic abuse recovery. We've got deep dive analyses of the Scary Movie franchise.
Which is such a wild pivot.
Right. And then we have these raw behind-the-scenes YouTube transcripts documenting Twitch megastar Kai Cenat. Specifically, his really dramatic pivot into high-end luxury fashion with his brand, Vivette, guided by designer Luminousz.
It's a lot to synthesize, but the common thread is so strong.
Yeah, because the mission today is to figure out what surviving a toxic narcissistic family structure and, surviving as the undisputed king of Twitch have in common.
Which sounds completely unrelated at first glance.
It really does. But it turns out, whether you're dealing with a volatile parent or a live chat of 100,000 people, escaping this invisible prison of performance requires the exact same psychological survival manual.
It sounds like an impossible intersection, but the underlying psychological architecture between those worlds is it's shockingly identical. We are essentially decoding the mechanics of how human beings avoid completely losing their minds under the weight of constant observation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the escape, we really have to start by fully defining the cage itself.
Right, the environment that forces the pivot.
Exactly. And the clinical reports we reviewed, they refer to this modern environment as the algorithmic monster.
Which is a terrifyingly accurate name.
It is. And it got me thinking about the biological reality of this. Living under this kind of constant monitor is, it's like playing a high-stakes video game where the pause button has just been physically ripped out of the controller.
You literally cannot stop.
No, you can't. You have to keep running, keep reacting, keep generating some kind of output. Because the moment you stop moving, the moment you get boring, the metrics drop.
Yeah.
And professionally, you die.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at what that constant input demand does to a person biologically.
It can't be good.
Oh, it's destructive.
Yeah.
The human nervous system simply did not evolve to process the real-time opinions, demands, and judgments of 100,000 strangers simultaneously.
Right, that's just way too much data for the brain.
Exactly. It triggers a perpetual state of hypervigilance. You're constantly scanning for threats or drops in engagement.
Which brings us to Kai Cenat and this specific event that pushed this to the absolute limit. Mafiathon 3.
Ah, yes. The marathon.
Yeah, the sources document this as a grueling 30-day marathon stream. Like, think about the sheer logistics of that for a second.
It's mind-boggling.
That is 720 consecutive hours of having a camera in your face.
So not just a camera, but millions of people watching.
Performing for them, reading live chat reactions,
Yeah.
sleeping on camera, eating on camera. It led to absolute physical and mental exhaustion for him.
He was pushed right to the absolute edge of human endurance.
And the entire thing was commodified as entertainment, like his exhaustion was the product.
Yeah, and when cultural psychologists look at that specific level of digital burnout, that total erosion of privacy, they compare it directly to the experience of surviving a narcissistic family structure.
Wait, really?
Yes, the mechanics driving the exhaustion are identical because both scenarios are built on something researchers call parasocial pressure.
Okay, I mean, I get how that works on a streaming platform, with an audience. But how does parasocial pressure apply to a family dynamic?
Well, it comes down to ownership.
Okay.
In a digital context, the audience develops a parasocial relationship where they feel they actually own the creator.
Like the creator owes him something.
Exactly. The creator exists just to dispense the specific type of content the audience wants exactly when they want it.
Right.
Now, in a toxic family, a narcissistic parent views the child not as an independent human being, but as an extension of their own ego.
Oh, wow. So they own the child's identity, basically.
Yes. The parent feels they own the child, and the child's role is to perform a specific version of themselves just to regulate the parent's self-esteem.
That is incredibly heavy.
It is. In both cases, the individual's life ceases to be a personal journey. It becomes a product meant to satisfy a relentless external monitor.
So if that individual tries to change or evolve or, even just set a boundary, that external monitor doesn't just get disappointed. It treats the change as a profound betrayal.
Precisely. The audience revolts, or the parent flies into a narcissistic rage. And because the human brain cannot survive in a state of constant, terrifying conflict with the very people it relies on for survival.
Well, it has to adapt somehow.
Right. It adapts. It triggers a psychological phenomenon known as identity fragmentation.
Oh, this is so fascinating because Cenat actually touched on this very explicitly. I mean, maybe not using those clinical terms, but during his Streamer Awards speech, he brought up the anime Death Note.
Which is such a brilliant pop culture touchstone for this.
It really is. He talked about how that specific show became a crucial coping mechanism for him. And, for those who haven't seen it, the main character, Light Yagami, has this profound, agonizing dual identity.
He's split right down the middle.
Exactly. On one hand, you have the godlike public figure who wields all this massive world-altering power. But on the other hand, you have the vulnerable, isolated, deeply paranoid, private human being just hiding out in his bedroom.
It's the perfect metaphor for identity fragmentation. Because when you have to be on and performing for thousands of hours to appease that constant monitor, the public persona becomes incredibly demanding.
It just eats up everything.
It requires all of your energy. And as the persona swells, the private, authentic human is starved of oxygen.
Wow.
The persona becomes a shield to protect the private self, but eventually, the shield becomes so heavy it crushes the person holding it.
I hear the psychology behind that. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I have to push back a little bit here.
Sure.
I mean, we are talking about a Twitch streamer.
Yeah.
Creators actively chase this fame. They spend thousands of dollars on the cameras, they build the crazy sets, they start the streams, they watch the numbers go up, and they reap huge financial rewards.
That's very true.
So is it really fair to call it a prison if they laid every single brick themselves and locked their own door?
That is the most common critique, and it is a vital distinction to make. The prison isn't the platform itself. Like, Twitch isn't a prison. The prison is forged when the performance completely consumes the person. Yes, the creator might build the initial stage voluntarily, but the audience and the algorithm eventually dictate the terms of survival.
Ah, I see.
When your entire livelihood and your sense of self-worth depends on reacting to a constant monitor, you stop intentionally creating your life. You're no longer acting, you are merely reacting to avoid a drop in metrics.
So you're just putting out fires all day.
Exactly. And that reactive loop inevitably leads to profound identity fatigue. You feel like a hollow shell playing a caricature of yourself, even if you're sitting in a mansion you bought with the stream money.
Okay, so the trap isn't the streaming itself. It's the loss of authorship over your own identity. You become a hostage to the caricature.
Perfectly said.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if the brain is fracturing under the pressure of this algorithmic monster, how does someone fix that fragmentation without just completely breaking down?
Right, what's the actual cure?
Yeah. Because if you look at this logically, the solution to 720 hours of overexposure would be, like, intensive therapy. Or maybe moving to a remote cabin in the woods for a year.
That would be the traditional advice, yes.
But Cenat's move was wildly counterintuitive. He didn't retreat into total obscurity. Instead, he appeared in a leaked teaser for Scary Movie 6.
Which, when you view it through the lens of trauma recovery, is an absolute masterstroke of what psychologists call emotional alchemy.
And the way this information even reached the public is just entirely divorced from the polished, algorithmic type machine.
It was incredibly chaotic.
Totally. There wasn't some highly produced Hollywood press release or a choreographed YouTube announcement. Marlon Wayans was just at a private screening for Scream 7, pulled out his phone, filmed a leaked teaser for Scary Movie 6 playing on the screen, and just posted it online.
Just raw, shaky phone footage.
Yeah, blurry, shaky footage, and fans instantly spotted Kai Cenat in it.
Yeah.
But he wasn't playing some totally different character. He was sitting in a streaming room setup.
He's literally inside the exact physical environment that just burned him to the ground.
Exactly. So why would stepping back into that room be a healing act?
To understand the mechanics of that, we have to analyze what the Scary Movie franchise fundamentally represents in our culture. It is a cultural blueprint for emotional alchemy.
How so?
Well, think about the movies they parody. Scream, The Ring, The Exorcist, these are deeply trauma-coded horror films.
Right.
They rely entirely on building anticipation, inducing helplessness, and stripping the protagonist of all control.
Yeah, the terror really comes from the fact that the monster is completely unstoppable and the victim is totally powerless.
Exactly. Scary Movie takes those exact terrifying elements and subjects them to the corrective, deflating lens of absurdity. By turning clinical horror into slapstick comedy, we transform fear and helplessness into psychological release.
That makes a lot of sense.
You take the thing that holds ultimate power over your nervous system and you force it to become ridiculous.
You know, it reminds me of the boggart in Harry Potter.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Yeah, the creature that turns into your absolute worst fear, right? And the only way to defeat it is by casting a spell that forces it to wear something hilarious, like your grandmother's clothes. Laughter just completely strips it of its power.
That is a brilliant analogy, and there is a direct clinical parallel here to trauma recovery. Therapists teach survivors of narcissistic abuse a specific tool called gray rocking.
Gray rocking, okay.
Yes. Just as Scary Movie takes the terrifying, unstoppable ghost face killer and turns him into a clumsy, relatable failure who, trips over a couch and gets high as survivor, uses gray rocking to defang a narcissist.
How does that actually work in practice, though?
Well, a narcissist feeds on emotional friction, your fear, your anger, your desperate attempts to explain yourself. They want the high-stakes horror movie.
Right, they want the drama.
Exactly. To do gray rocking, you intentionally make yourself as boring, unresponsive, and uninteresting as a gray rock.
Just totally flat.
Yes. You take their screaming rage, which is designed to terrify you, and you treat it like a dry, predictable documentary. You offer zero emotional supply. And by doing so, you strip the threat of its psychological power over you.
Oh, wow. So by stepping onto that movie set and literally parodying his own streaming room, Cenat is performing this supreme act of psychological resistance.
He is defanging his own digital prison.
He's no longer the victim trapped inside the room, desperately trying to appease the live chat. He's the author of its parody. He's making the algorithmic monster look ridiculous.
He is reclaiming the narrative. But, and this is a crucial pivot in our sources, emotional alchemy is only the first step. You cannot live the rest of your life inside a parody.
Yeah, that wouldn't be sustainable.
Right. Once you have used humor to defang the immediate threat, you must build a protective barrier so the private self can actually heal and figure out what it wants to become next.
And this introduces a massive modern dilemma. Because in our current digital culture, disappearing is treated as a career death sentence.
Oh, absolutely.
If you aren't posting on social media, if you aren't updating your story every 3 hours to prove you still exist, the public just assumes you've fallen off. You cease to matter.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. So how does someone protect that vulnerable private human when the entire architecture of the world demands constant real-time updates?
What's fascinating here is a psychological mechanism known as the Firewall Protocol, which relies heavily on strategic silence. The environment has to shift from the chaotic noise of the digital world to something much more grounded and tactile.
And our sources detail exactly how Cenat executed this firewall. He dropped this infamous 20-minute video simply titled, "I Quit."
Which sent shockwaves everywhere.
Naturally. The entire internet assumed it was a massive retirement announcement, but the transcripts reveal it wasn't a retirement at all. It was a profound reframing.
He wasn't quitting his audience.
No, he was explicitly quitting the reactive, fragmented version of himself that only existed in front of a monitor.
He was terminating the contract with the constant monitor.
Exactly. The video showed him traveling to Italy for a month.
Oh.
And not for vacation, but to intensely study the physical craft of denim.
He went straight to the physical world.
Yeah, he was seeking out high-level mentorship from established fashion heavyweights like Law Roach. And what is most fascinating to me is his behavior regarding that Scary Movie 6 leak.
The absolute silence.
Total silence. When it went viral, he maintained absolute, total silence. There was no press tour, no explanatory YouTube video breaking down his genius pivot.
Nothing at all.
He even appeared on the Jennifer Hudson show around that time, and he didn't casually mention it or try to hype it up. Just complete absolute silence.
That silence is the Firewall Protocol in action. The psychology reports emphasize a concept that feels incredibly countercultural right now, which is rest is resistance.
Rest is resistance. I love that.
In an algorithmic culture that demands permanent visibility and demands that you monetize every single thought, taking a pause is a radical act of self-preservation. Cenat's silence acts as a firm, impenetrable boundary.
It's almost like he's refusing to feed the machine the raw materials it needs to build a new cage.
That is exactly what he's doing. Psychologically speaking, you do not owe the internet or your abusers a real-time narration of your personal growth.
Right.
When you explain yourself while you're still in the early stages of healing or reinventing, you give the audience or the narcissist the exact data they need to box you back into a category they feel comfortable with.
Oh, that makes so much sense. If you tell them what you're building, they'll tell you why it won't work or why it's not what they want from you.
Yes. By remaining silent, you turn the inevitable hate bandwagon or the chorus of demands into a vacuum. You starve the constant monitor of its friction.
You just give nothing to grab onto.
Exactly. This period of deliberate quiet allows the creator or the survivor to completely reclaim authorship of their story before the public has a chance to project their own insecurities onto it. You protect the private self until the new foundation is completely poured and solidified.
And that new foundation has to be fundamentally different from the old one, right? Behind the protection of that firewall, you have to build a new identity that cannot be easily dismantled.
It has to be solid.
Moving from digital clout to physical reality is a brutal transition, and we see this play out in the raw conversations documented between Kai Cenat and the luxury designer Luka Sabbat.
Those transcripts are incredibly revealing.
They really are. Sabbat is guiding Cenat through the creation of his brand, Vivid, and he shares this incredibly relatable, specific detail about his own learning curve in high-end fashion.
He talks about the physical friction of luxury versus the frictionless nature of the internet.
Right. Sabbat talks about an early realization he had when he was selling a jacket for $7,000. He realized he hadn't even thought to source high-quality garment bags to put the jacket in.
It's such a grounded detail.
He describes it as a massive wake-up call about how crucial the physical client experience is. Because, when you exist solely on the internet, your product is just light hitting a screen.
There's no weight to it.
Exactly. But when you move to physical luxury, the unseen, tactile details are what ground the brand in reality. Sabbat emphasizes that it comes down to the specific weight of the paper the receipt is printed on, the font used, and the exact physical resistance you feel when you pull the lid off a shoebox.
That resistance is everything.
Yeah, those tiny points of friction prove that intentional human hands were involved.
This raises an important question, though, because it highlights the ultimate challenge of a pivot. How do you execute a change of this magnitude without entirely losing your audience or diluting whatever core brand you already have?
That's the million-dollar question.
In trauma recovery, the equivalent question is, how does a survivor rebuild an entirely new life without slowly falling back into their old, comfortable, people-pleasing habits?
Right. The old patterns are so easy to slip back into.
Exactly. The psychological answer and the fashion answer is the establishment of strong codes.
And Sabbat advises Cenat on exactly this, using what he calls the 5 looks philosophy. He basically warns Cenat not to try and be a jack of all trades.
Which is the natural instinct for a creator.
It really is. The instinct for a digital creator is volume. Like, drop a sprawling collection of 47 mediocre screen-printed hoodies just to have a lot of product moving out the door.
Just feed the content beast.
Exactly. But Sabbat says no. Instead, present exactly 5 dialed-in looks. He says these 5 looks must be so meticulously crafted, every detail, the hardware on the zippers, the lining of the pockets, the drape of the silhouette, that they cause absolute pain.
Absolute pain, such a powerful phrase.
And by pain, he means the craftsmanship is so undeniably masterful that even your harshest critics are forced to respect it. You give the public far fewer targets to shoot at, but you make sure the targets you do provide are bulletproof.
That is the defining essence of strong codes. To survive a pivot, you must define your master silhouette, your undeniable point of view. Sabbat actually cites several historical fashion greats to drive this point home.
Oh, like who?
Well, look at Martin Margiela. He is universally known for repurposed trash, taking the discarded, the raw, and elevating it to the highest levels of fashion. It's an undeniable code.
That's a very specific lane.
Yes, or Hedi Slimane. He is the undisputed architect of the rock and roll skinny silhouette. He doesn't try to make baggy streetwear, he masters his code. And consider Yoji Yamamoto, who Sabat explicitly refers to as the goat of black clothes.
Yamamoto is fascinating to me because he actively rejects the algorithmic demand for constant newness.
Exactly. Yamamoto has spent over 30 years finding infinite, brilliant ways to reinvent a single black trench coat. He doesn't care what the current trend cycle dictates.
He just sticks to what he knows.
These designers established a specific strong code and refused to deviate. In the realm of trauma recovery, this mirrors a survivor choosing a core set of boundaries and values that are so firm, so deeply rooted in their private truth, that the narcissistic family structure can no longer gaslight them about who they are.
Wow.
They stop trying to be the perfect child for the parent, and they become undeniably themselves.
You become undeniable.
Mm.
But, part of making that new identity undeniable to yourself is having tangible proof of the work.
Yes, the evidence.
This is where the concept of the physical artifact comes into play. The sources highlighted something called the Vivid Journal 1.
Ah, the notebook.
Yeah, this was a physical, leather-bound notebook that Kai Cenat was seen carrying around during Paris Fashion Week. But it wasn't some polished, curated marketing prop designed to look cool on Instagram.
It was real.
It was so real. The transcripts note that it was filled with his raw, messy handwriting, complete with heavily crossed-out words, spelling errors, and blatant grammar mistakes. It documented his failures with fabric prototypes just as much as his successes.
The psychological weight of that artifact, especially for someone transitioning out of a digital space, just cannot be overstated.
How so?
Consider the nature of the digital world. If you make a mistake on a stream or type a typo in a tweet, you can instantly delete it. It vanishes. There is no friction, and therefore there is no permanent record of the struggle.
It's like it never happened.
But in a physical journal, a crossed-out spelling error is permanently inked onto the page. You have to look at it.
It grounds you in reality.
Precisely. In trauma recovery, a physical artifact like a private handwritten journal serves to ground your reality against gaslighting.
Because you have proof.
Yes. When the abuser tries to rewrite history, when they look you in the eye and say, that didn't happen, or you were never good enough to do this, your journal stands as the definitive physical truth.
It's an anchor.
For a digital creator desperately pivoting to the slow physical world of luxury fashion, that raw, unedited journal proves to himself that he is actually doing the grueling work behind the scenes. It signals the complete psychological transition from reactive performance, just giving the internet whatever it demands in the moment, to intentional creation.
It is the ultimate proof that you are no longer just surviving, you're building. So what does this all mean? Let's trace the massive arc we've walked through today. We started by examining the exhausting biological burnout of the algorithmic monster, that invisible prison of metrics, parasocial pressure, and the identity fragmentation that occurs when the constant monitor demands too much.
The breaking point.
Right. Then we explored the emotional alchemy required to survive it. We saw how stepping into the absurdity, like parodying the streaming room in Scary Movie, defangs the threat in the exact same way Gray rocking defangs a narcissist.
Taking the power back through humor.
Exactly. From there, we retreated behind the Firewall Protocol, recognizing that strategic silence and deliberate rest are radical forms of resistance. They're used to protect the private human while the foundation is repoured.
The crucial pause.
And finally, we emerged to engage in intentional creation, utilizing the friction of physical reality to build an undeniable new identity through strong codes and the five-list philosophy.
It is an incredible journey. And it reinforces the fact that reinvention truly is the ultimate survival manual.
It really is.
The goal across all of these seemingly disparate scenarios is identical. You must move from being a reactive victim owned by your external metrics, whether those metrics are Twitch viewers constantly demanding a reaction or a parent's fragile, volatile approval, to becoming the systems architect of your own life.
You're in charge now.
Exactly. You lay the bricks, you write the codes, and you alone decide who gets access to the interior.
It's all about taking the power back. And we want to leave you listening right now with a final provocative challenge today. It's pulled straight from a psychological journal prompt found in our source materials, and it is something to deeply consider regardless of your profession.
A powerful prompt.
It really is. Think about this.
Yeah.
If you could permanently archive the public persona you have built just to survive your own daily algorithm, whether that's your persona at the office, on your Instagram feed, or around your family, what are 3 strong codes you would choose for yourself?
3 core values.
Yeah. 3 core values, passions, or even personal silhouettes that have absolutely nothing to do with what anyone else expects of you.
It is a profound question. What remains when the audience leaves the room?
Take your own legacy audit today. Figure out what your 5 undeniably bulletproof looks are. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to live in the panopticon. That invisible prison of performance is only as strong as your willingness to keep running on the treadmill.
You hold the key.
You can always choose to unplug the monitor, embrace the silence, step out of the cell, and start drawing your own blueprints. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.